One thing, totally off topic, brand new topic, and I've mentioned this before, and I hate to be, you ever watch that show Inside the Actor's Studio?
Yes.
Like the dude who's the host.
Yes.
He'll have like a 10-minute monologue where he talks about how awesome the actor is to their face.
Yeah.
And the actor kind of, 10 minutes, they're kind of like,
Stop. But one thing, Grant, and I say this in full sincerity, like I've noticed over the years, that you are an excellent public speaker. You're very good at presenting. You're great at extemporaneous speaking, off the cuff stuff. You answer questions very well. My question for you is, do you have any formal training in that, or is it just your experience having been put in front of people, in front of the camera, that has sort of led you to where you are today?
Yeah. Now that you asked that, hang on.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, when I was younger, I started speaking in front of crowds to win the oratorical contest.
Oh, okay. What's the age of, like,
Oh,
6?
this was middle school.
okay.
Yeah, middle school.
So this is your thing. You have been.
I have been, but it's like I never really had any training. I didn't do any courses. I did drama in high school, which certainly helps. But I think that everything that I've learned has just been through doing it. And when I got on the show, that's when professional speaking engagements started. And suddenly people were giving me money to do this. And I figured I should probably get better at doing it. And I did learn. It's nothing like going in front of a crowd and trying to entertain them with your stories.
Yeah.
To teach you what material works and what doesn't work. And very quickly, it was Carrie Torrey and I were doing these gigs like on the weekends, maybe once a month. Sometimes during a break, we'd do a whole week of these appearances, and getting to read the crowd and try out different stories. I mean, it's not like we didn't have plenty of fun stories to tell. We had a wealth of weird stuff to tell about, our not only Mythbusters, but what we were doing when we grew up, and
I assume your background at ILM.
my background, yeah, in special effects.
Robot building.
Plenty of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
But it was just weeding all that down into, distilling it into the best stories and the best versions of those stories, and knowing when to take a laugh, and reading the audience, and trying to discern if they were with you or if they weren't with you. And when you've got them on the hook, it's the best feeling ever, because they're waiting. They're like hungry. They're waiting for what you're going to say next. So realizing all that, it's all from doing it, and doing it a lot, over and over again.
I'll bet. And I assume that's a very different experience than when you're filming the show. There's a much more, there's an immediacy to it, there's an intimacy to it, and there's no take two.
Yeah.
I guess. Is that at all intimidating, or you could just sort of flip a switch and you're like,
yeah, that's right.
the show begins now.
No, it's very different shooting Mythbusters, because we've got no live studio audience. When we do the show, 99.99% of the time, unless we have a bunch of volunteers with us, it's just us. It's just us and our cameraman, our sound recorders, and our director-producer. That's it. And so, if you tell a joke,
no feedback.
you're not going to get a huge, thunderous, crowd applauding. But when you're speaking in front of a crowd, it is immediate. And it's great to have that feedback. But on the flip side of that, if you're in front of a crowd and you're bombing, it's deafening.
Has that happened? Have you?
Oh yeah.
Oh really?
Oh yeah. It's happened. I mean, I've done gigs where most of the time when we bomb, it's because something in the crowd, like the crowd wasn't our crowd.
But wouldn't they like be paying to be there, or did they go to the wrong room, or like?
No. It's a lot of times, like most of our gigs are college gigs. Not all of them, but most of them. And most of the college gigs, those are all like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
people
they're
who watch
in it, right?
the show, they love. But occasionally we'll get a corporate gig or something where they will pay to have us come and speak to maybe a younger crowd. And so they'll be like all ages, and then like 3-year-old kids running around back and forth in front of us, or the people in the back can't hear us. A lot of times that's what it is. They can't hear you say the jokes. You say something that you know has killed 9 times out of 10, and there'll be no response. And you're like, ow, I'm bombing. And sometimes it'll be a corporate gig where, you know, people think it's fun to have Mythbusters, and you know, and it's great.
Sounds like a great idea.
And then for whatever reason, the clientele isn't into you. So it happens occasionally, but very rarely.
And does that sort of get you right here, or do you just like, okay?
You know, it certainly hurts for a little bit, but then you're like, well, you know, if 1 out of 75 appearances sucks, then you're probably doing okay.
You're doing all right.
One question I get asked a lot, and by that I mean twice, and you being a builder of things, I'd like to hear your opinion. If someone wanted to get into building things, and let's start small, I'm curious, like if you were to recommend to them a few must-have items for a toolkit to get started in building whatever, miniatures, props, model kits, something sort of this size-ish.
Yeah.
What are some things someone would need?
For that question, I think the devil is in the details, and meaning there are many things that you can make that are this size. It really depends, your toolkit depends on the media. For example, if you're building models, your toolkit will be cyanoacrylate glue, an accelerator, and sandpaper, and files, and paint, and an airbrush. But if you're talking about wooden things, that tool set is completely different. I mean, the only thing that's common really, and again, if you're talking about metal, it'll be similar to wood, but the blades will all be different. Things will be different. So there are a few common things, tape measure, for example, but beyond that, we build so many different things out of so many different materials. My toolbox is full of, you know, I've got 2 toolboxes actually, one of which specifically dedicated to electronics, and the other one has drawers of all different types of tools, because on our show, you never know what you're going to be building, and it could be wood, it could be plastic, it could be metal, it could be meat, it could be bone.
You build meat and bone?
Yes, it's, you know, you never know what you're going to be working with.
Yeah.
So if you were starting out building, certainly a basic toolkit that you could get at a hardware store with screwdrivers, tape measure, hammer, wrenches. I mean, that would get you reasonably far, but beyond that, whatever your project is, that's what's going to dictate what your tool set is.
Perfect.
Then let me ask you this, and then we'll wrap up. I assume over the years, Mythbusters has been on for 10 years now, is that? Or you're coming on your 10th year?
10 years.
And prior to that, you were building stuff for
Yes.
ILM, for competitions and whatnot.
Yes.
Do you still run into challenges that you don't immediately know how to solve?
Oh, absolutely. All the time. You know, and I think that's one of the best things about this job, is that it's not the same thing every week. Every week, it's, and sometimes every other day is something totally different. We're constantly having to solve problems and find ways to test things that nobody has done before. And I think that is a really big part of why I like this job, because you never know what's going to happen, but you do know that eventually you will find a way to test it.
You had one job. One job. Yes. Let me think. Anything you can think of that you'd like to have documented forever? Because I'm sure you don't have many of these lying around. So.
Yes. Let's see.
Actually, that's a great question I have for you.
Do you get bored of doing interviews and speaking engagements and just sort of, does it wear you down at all?
Because I feel like I've taken up a lot of your time.
No, actually, you know what is boring is when the interviews ask you the same question over and over. And the number one question.
What's your favorite episode?
Get, yeah, what's your favorite myth?
Okay.
Number one question.
Is that really? That's okay.
Yeah.
But like, is that something interviewers ask, or is that something like kids ask when you're?
Yes.
Okay.
Both. You know, both. And when it's refreshing when you do an interview that is not specifically about Mythbusters, when it talks about like the geekier things that I do, which I think fits in, you know, with your audience.
Definitely. Well, I like to, you know, it's funny. I've been really trying to determine what the focus of my YouTube channel is, because originally it was
my builds.
Yeah.
It was here's me
the
building
Matmobile.
stuff. Yeah, it's like the Matmobile or the.
And then I was like working on some robots and stuff, and then it sort of expanded because I had friends who wanted to shoot tutorials, so we did a couple of tutorial videos, and I'm like, this is cool, and people like those. And then I did a couple of interviews with people where we were talking about their projects, but it wasn't something they were building. Like it was maybe like, in fact, I talked to Vic Mignogna a year ago,
and his project was Star Trek Continues.
Right.
So it wasn't like, you know, I started sawing and then I glued it. It was a project of a very different nature.
And what's really happened as the channel has evolved over time is the types of projects I discuss with people are sort of all over the place. And what's really great about it
is the type of people that I'm somehow winding up interviewing. Like I never would have thought, sitting in the garage interviewing the guitarist for the band, that one day flash forward and I'd be interviewing people who are, you know, are on a show like Mythbusters, or were on the original Star Trek series, or were on Voyager, so, or, you know, anime voice actors. So it's really kind of exploded, and I think it's really cool, and it's interesting, and I'm actually, it makes me very happy to know. I assume you were referring to this interview in what you said.
Yes.
It makes me very happy to know that like the types of things we talk about aren't sort of just the same old
tried and true. What was your favorite episode? How did you get hired? What's your biggest challenge? What's your...
See that right there? That is 99% of the interviews. Those 3 questions.
Because I mean, they are interesting questions. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But they've sort of
been asked many times before, and a simple Wikipedia or Google search will reveal that in stunning detail.
Yeah, that's how I did some of my prep for some of my other interviews. Is I'd go look at YouTube interviews, and it's always the same stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's sort of a tragedy, because you're missing out on opportunities to get great and interesting stories out of people, and all you really have to do is kind of pull a little bit, because I think people love talking about their experiences. And they don't like saying the same thing over and over again. Unless maybe they're a robot or something.
There you go.
So that's
the essence of it. That's the magic.
I hope so.
You've got it.
That's great to hear. I've got the magic.
That's
great.
it. Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear, Grant. So, Grant, thank you so much. I know I've taken up a lot of your valuable time that you could have been using to build something amazing.
Yes, I'm now only slightly behind schedule on 24 projects, but that, you know, it's worth it. This is quality time with us.
My
Matt.
12 subscribers, thank you.
Yeah.
And they will no doubt enjoy hearing from you. And
honestly, Grant, I really look forward to seeing what you come up with for your character on Star Trek Renegades. Can't wait for the debut of Star Trek Continues
at Phoenix Comic-Con.
And I look forward to your appearance in every web series ever from here on out.
Well, thank you very much.
High five. All right, awesome.
Hi everybody, this is Grant Imahara from Mythbusters, and I'm a Star Trek fan. Now, some people ask, in these days when there are big budget Star Trek reboots, major motion pictures out there, is there any room for a smaller fan production? Well, as an actor in Star Trek Continues, and now Star Trek Renegades, I can say yes, absolutely yes. See, the thing is, the Star Trek universe is a huge universe, and there are many, many stories to be told. And as a fan, I want to hear these stories. I'm hungry for more. Now, the Star Trek Renegades people have assembled an awesome cast. They've got many, many Star Trek alumni. Tim Russ, Garrett Wang, Robert Picardo, and Walter Koenig, Chekhov himself. You can't assemble a cast like that without knowing a thing or two about Star Trek. And here's where you come in. They need your help. They want to do this right, and that means great costumes, makeup, excellent visual effects, music, the whole 9 yards. So Star Trek fans, we're calling on you, because we need your help to make it so.
Make it so.